Hi, hello everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to a new live event with CareerFoundry. We are going to give it a moment so more people can join and get settled. First, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Belinda, Juniors Event Manager here at CareerFoundry, hosting this event from the south of Spain, actually. And today I'm pleased to welcome back again to the channel to Maureen Herben. Many of you might know her because Maureen has been hosting many webinars with us. But for those who are new, I will tell a little bit about her. She's a CareerFoundry UX design graduate who is currently working as senior product designer at Zalando. She already has many years of experience in the field and is a great expert in UX design, so it's a real pleasure to have her back with us today. On this occasion, she will share 8 things she wished she would have known before starting out in UX design. While people are joining, please let us know where you are watching us from and maybe why you are interested in a career change into tech in the chat on the right-hand side. We would love to make this as interactive as possible, so please feel free to drop any comment you would like to share with us. Also, I would like to introduce you to CareerFoundry. CareerFoundry is the online school for your career change into tech. We guide you from complete beginner to job-ready professional in UX and UI design and help you land your first job in the field. We are not any old school. Our programs are so flexible that you don't need to quit your job to change your career. You get regular one-to-one mentorship from not one, but two industry experts. And if you don't land a job within 180 days of graduation, we refund your tuition. And this is our job guarantee. Please let me also remind you a few of our house rules. This webinar will be recorded and we will send the recording out tomorrow via email for those who are registered in Big Marker. And if you have any question for Maureen, please drop them in the chat and we will answer them at the Q&A after the presentation. And if you have any question about CareerFoundry programs, I recommend booking a call with one of our program advisors. They will be very happy to speak with you. They will answer all of your questions and provide you with further information. And with that said, I won't take any more time. I'll disappear into the background, but I'll be back for the Q&A. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Maureen, the floor is yours. Enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Belinda. And thank you everyone that is joining. I'm gonna give a disclaimer from the beginning. I have a slight cold coming up, so my voice might crack at some times. Let's hope it's just gonna keep up with me for the following hour that we have. So today I'm gonna tell you 8 lessons or things that I wish I knew before starting out in UX design. And if you have any questions or things that you're particularly curious about, then leave them in the chat as well, because by the end of the event, we will have some time to answer some of your questions. So Belinda already gave an introduction about CareerFoundry, so I'm just gonna skip over that for now. And I'll give a short introduction of who I am. So I am actually a CareerFoundry alumni. I'd done the course in 2017, so that's already a while ago. And currently I work as a senior product designer at Zalando, which is a fashion platform here in Europe. I also share content on UX design and tips on how to grow your career or how to switch your career into the UX industry on Instagram. So some people might know me from there. You can find me on @ux.collection. And why I do this and what makes me really excited is when I can help other people start their UX design career, and now I can see them grow into this industry. And the reason I do that is because when I started my UX journey, I did not know any UX designers. It was something that was already there and it was upcoming, but I found it very hard to find anyone that I could ask questions to. So I hope with these webinars and the other things, the videos that we do, that I can be that person for you that you can ask questions to. And I think today's webinar is one that I wish I could have attended before starting in UX design. I'm going to share all the lessons and mistakes I've made with you today. So I hope you can take something from it. So I'll talk about 8 things that I wish I knew before I started out in UX design. There are different kind of things about design process, about my career. So let's just jump right into it. So the first thing that I noticed as I started working in UX design, and what I didn't expect before, is that as a designer, we wear many hats. And the title UX designer might therefore be a bit misleading, because you might expect to spend all of your days behind Figma and just creating wireframes and just designing away. And the reality is that that is just one of the many things that you will find yourself doing. Because apart from that design work, we're also doing a lot of research, we're also doing a lot of interviewing with people, facilitating workshops, facilitating collaboration in companies. We're writing things, research, insights, but also presentations, briefings, user stories. And we also do a lot of analyzing, so analyzing user research data. So, from in my day to day job, I fulfill many different roles, and many of them I didn't anticipate before I started working out in design or in UX design. So, to give you a bit of an idea of how my daily life looks like right now, working at Zalando, I barely work in Figma anymore. That's not something that I do a lot. Instead, I spend a lot of time doing user research right now. I spend a lot of time building presentations, coming up with strategies. A essential part of my job right now is bringing people together and making sure that everyone is on the same page about what we want to build. It's a lot about understanding what other people are trying to achieve and kind of building bridges. So I think that that is typical for a more experienced role. But even when I was working as a junior UX designer, I was not just creating wireframes in Figma, but even then I was already facilitating workshops. I was already doing user research. I was already in contact with different stakeholders to get them on board with our ideas. So working as a designer is a very varied job. And that is also one of the things that I really like about it. But it can at times also be overwhelming because you're juggling so many balls at the same time. And how can you switch between these different roles? So that might take a bit of time before you feel comfortable in doing that. But with time also comes experience. The second thing, and we're actually going to do a webinar on design thinking in June. So if you want to know more about that, I would say keep your eyes on the CareerFoundry website. But the second insight I had, which was pretty mind blowing to me in the beginning, is that the design thinking process is not linear. So the way that we oftentimes learn about design thinking, or also the way that you would see it explained when you Google it, is that it is this 5-step process, and you start with empathizing and you end with a prototype that you can test. And it almost seems like design is as simple as following 5 steps, moving from understanding the user to understanding the problem to building a concept that you can test. When I started working as a UX designer, I found that there is nothing about the design process that is clear or clean or linear. It's rather a chaotic process where a lot of things are happening at the same time. And I found that quite difficult in the beginning because I was thinking, okay, but we first need to finish step 1 before we can move to step 2. And what you will see when you're actually going to work as a UX designer, is that a lot of steps are happening at the same time, or sometimes they're even skipped. So, for example, what I have experienced multiple times is that the step that focuses on research is skipped because there is no budget or there is no time, or you're joining a project at a later phase in the process and the research has already been done and you're already working with the insights. So, even though research is a very essential step of design, it's also the step that companies tend to underestimate. And so oftentimes there is only limited time or there's only limited budget to do this. Another thing that I found was that I've learned to first create low fidelity wireframes, so really rough sketches of how a concept might look like, and then iteratively move towards a design that is more finalized. What you will find in reality is that you don't have a month to think about your sketches and try different things out and then gradually move towards something that is more like a polished product. You are moving in a speed that's way faster, meaning you might not have as much time to work on wireframes, or you might work at a company that uses a design system. And so there is no need to do everything from scratch because you can use design components that this system already has. So you'll find that in reality, this design thinking process, I wouldn't even want to call it a process. It's more like a framework that helps you to get into a designer's mindset. And this designer's mindset is characterized by curiosity, by wanting to understand the user, by working iteratively, by testing your ideas out. And design thinking is one framework or one way to get this mindset. But I would challenge the idea that it is a process. But as I said, we're going to do a webinar on this next month in which I will dive deeper into this. Another takeaway, I think, to wrap this up is that because it is not linear, it means that some phases might be repeated. You might do multiple cycles of user research, or you might do multiple cycles of user testing, moving back to the drawing board, thinking of new sketches, and then testing those again. So that iterative part is actually really important in our jobs as designers, and something that might not be as clear when you think of the design thinking process as just a linear 5-step process. The second lesson, and this is something that maybe might be demotivating to people, it's that becoming a UX designer takes time, and it takes a lot of time. And I think there is this notion that you can become a UX designer in a matter of weeks or in a matter of 3 months, and that it is something that you can immediately get a flashy job in tech with a lot of money. And what people forget is that in order to get that, and that is definitely achievable, you need to put in time. And your boot camp or an online course that you're doing, or maybe if you're doing self study, that should really be regarded as just the beginning of your journey. So if you are now enrolling in CareerFoundry, or you've just started, or you're thinking about starting, I would really recommend you spend more time than what the course is offering you. Do additional case studies, read up on things, get some books about design and read them up, go to design events. What is the bootcamp doing is it gives you a very strong foundation, but you need to add to that to really perfect your craft. And so for me, for example, it took almost a year to become a UX designer and to find my first UX job. And this was back in 2017. The market then looked very different than it looks now. Now it's more competitive, meaning you will need to put in more effort. But if you are up for that, if you are motivated, if you are realistic about your UX journey and know that you cannot have everything in 6 weeks, then it is a very rewarding career because there are now so many designers, because there is now so much content out there, that there is so much for you to learn, so much that you can explore. And that learning part is something that also never really stops. Even now, I'm still learning so much about design practices, and it's also important to keep on learning because our industry changes very fast. Now, for example, a lot of people are worrying about AI and what AI will have as an impact on UX design, and if it might even make UX designers not needed anymore. And I think a different way to look at this is not, am I going to lose my skills? But it's more, if an AI right now can do your job, is it the AI's fault, or are you not doing a really good job at varying your skill set? And so think about it like this way: AI tools can help you build a stronger skill set, and it can save time in very critical points. We just have to learn how to deal with these new things. So to wrap that all up and not completely go into an AI discussion, if you consider yourself a lifelong learner, if you enjoy learning new things, if you enjoy discovering new things, then I think UX design is the right fit for you, because you will have a lot of opportunities to learn new things here. Then another thing, and I used to read this a lot whenever I read about UX design in articles, is that they call themselves problem solvers. But UX design is way more than problem solving. At some point, it might even not be about problem solving, but more about problem defining. So, what I find in my job right now is that a considerable amount of time goes into not answering the question, but figuring out which question to ask in the first place. So, thinking about um, what are the different needs that our users are facing? What are the different pains and gains that they are facing? What is the challenge that is worth pursuing out of a user centric perspective, out of a business perspective, out of a technical perspective? Which challenge can we technically pursue and solve? So rather than seeing ourselves as problem solvers, I would say we're more like problem definers. So we spend a lot of time collecting information, analyzing information, extracting insights, understanding different perspectives. So, in other words, we first need to understand the right problem before you can solve the problem right. And um, this is something that you can already start practicing today. If you want to work on your portfolio, for example, you will find that a lot of people focus on this problem solving part, on showing the solution, and they tend to spend less time on the problem defining part or the problem understanding part, which is actually the thing that is really interesting to learn about. So, what are the insights that you've had, and how does that lead you to certain design decisions, and how does that lead you to certain problem statements or certain how might we questions? So even when you're not working as a UX designer yet and you're just starting your UX journey, keep in mind that understanding the problem comes before solving the problem. And this sounds very obvious, but I can guarantee you that a lot of people already start to solve a problem even before they really know which problem to solve. That's also something that you see in a lot of companies. And that's the reason also why we are hired by these companies. It's to double check and say, hey, is this the right thing that we're solving here? Or do we need to do more research to truly understand how we could serve our customers or our users in the best way? I already touched upon this just shortly before, but I think building bridges is a vital part of our job. What does that mean? That means that as a UX designer, you're in a very unique position because you're working with very different teams. You're working with developers, you might be working with marketing teams or sales teams, you might be working with other design teams. You have, of course, your managers, but then also when you're working for an agency, you have your clients and they have their customers. So there are a lot of different actors, a lot of different people that you're going to work together with. And you, as a designer, have the opportunity to bring all of these people together and build something together. So that means that you need to be open to working with different disciplines. And that also means that you need to learn how to talk with all of these different people. As you can imagine, talking with a developer, an engineer, is very different than talking with someone that works at customer care or someone that works at marketing, because they have a different way of working, they have different goals. So the way that they communicate and the things that they find important are also um, different. And now you might be thinking, what happens if I'm an introvert and I don't really like talking with a lot of different people and I don't really like working with a lot of different people? I think that introverts actually have a very special skill that can be used in the UX design practice, which is that they are oftentimes active listeners, people that are very analytical, people that know that can reflect really well, which is important when you want to work with many different people that all have contradicting goals or contradicting wants, and you need to find a compromise. However, I will give as a warning that it is a job that has a lot of social exposure, so to say. You will be in the room with a lot of different people, so that is definitely something to consider. But it is also something that you can grow into, and I think that is something that people might um, underestimate themselves for. So when I started working as a UX designer, I was actually completely freaked out by the idea of constantly having to work with many different people. And for example, user interviews would stress me out. Just the idea of talking with so many different people. And it was something that I worried would take a lot of time and a lot of energy. But it's a skill and you can learn that skill. And how with more collaborations, with more workshops, with more user interviews, you train this skill even when you're an introvert, and it actually becomes easier. Now, another thing that is essential when you're working in UX, and a very realistic challenge that you will probably face regardless of where you're going to work, is this thing that they call evangelizing UX. One second. I can already feel my voice like giving up on me. So, evangelizing UX means that we have to make other people in the company understand why we're there and why it's good that we're there. So, what's the value that we have to bring? Because even though it sounds completely obvious that you want to create products that users love and that solve actual user problems, you will find that when you're working in a company, it's not that obvious, and people just assume that they know what customers want, and you're there as kind of the critical person that is putting up their finger and saying, well, I think we need to do more research. I think we need to redefine this different problem. And so that might lead to people becoming a bit skeptical of why you're there and who you are and what the value of design is. Or a lot of people might think that UX designers are just graphic designers, or not just graphic designers. They think that we are graphic designers. And so, one of the things that I didn't think about in the beginning was that I would have to justify me being there. And that is actually something that I'm doing a lot in my job now, and I've learned how to do this. And I actually find pride in it now also. I like to educate people about UX design and why it is important and what our value is. And I see it as a challenge to help other people understand how UX design and how UX designers can support their goals and can serve them. And it's really rewarding when you first see someone that doesn't really know what UX designers are and how they have to work together with them, and then slowly understanding why we're here, what our value is, and really getting that collaboration into something that's very fruitful and strong. And the best way to build bridges I found was that it is a lot about taking away worries and showing what your tool set and what your skills can do for your colleagues, for your non-design colleagues. So I found that in the beginning this could be frustrating because you're thinking, well, I just want to do my job, and obviously we have UX designers, and obviously we're needed, and why do we have this conversation, and why are you questioning the need for design? But as soon as I realized that people are just worried, they just don't know what design is and what it does and how it impacts their job, and if they might be made redundant. Um, Realizing that and understanding what their needs are and showing them how you can support them actually helps a real good deal with building bridges. Then the sixth lesson I've learned is that good design is good business. When I started working out as a UX designer, I thought, I'm the advocate for the user. I will always pledge for the user. I will always do what is best for the user. And yes, we are advocates for the users. We are the voice of the customers. But that doesn't mean that they are always right. And it also does not mean that we always need to do what they want or what they say they need, because you will find that most UX designers work in a for-profit context, unless you're going to work for an NGO. But most of the time, you will find yourself working at a company that needs to make money. And as you can imagine, what is good for the business is not necessarily the same thing as what users want. You need to find a balance. And understanding this business perspective is actually super important when you want to create user experiences, because again, you have to find that balance between what what challenges they face or what opportunities we see for them versus what challenges and opportunities we see for the business. So a good way to understand business better is by understanding your company's vision. What is it that they're trying to achieve? What are the value systems that exist within your company? What are the strategies? If you work at a company, ask your managers if you can read about the operational plans or about the strategies and the visions that your company has created, because that helps you better understand the internal challenges. When you look into an operational plan, it helps you better understand where the money is going. So it also helps you understand where the company hopes to generate profit. And you will find that when you start working in a company, the goals that you have to achieve are not just make the users happy, but it's about conversion. How can we get more customers, or how can we keep our customers, or it's about reducing costs, or it's about making processes more efficient and fast. So business and this business perspective and this user perspective really are two sides of the same coin. It's the same thing, and you need to understand both if you want to create good user experiences. Then, I'm not sure about you, but when I thought about UX design, I imagined something that's, like I said, involves a lot of designing in Figma, something that's very creative, and it is very creative. But when we think of creativity, we tend to think of something that is artistic, that is art, that has a lot of our own in it, a lot of personal interpretation in it, and UX design is a very creative job, but not in the artistic sense, but rather in the sense of problem defining and problem solving in new ways, or taking what already is out there and finding a way to solve a problem. So, where the expectation might be that you're going to design a lot of screens, and when you think of a creative person, you might think of someone that is very artistic or that can draw really well. And that is not what UX design is about. I have had this question asked before, where people ask, do I have to be good at drawing to become a UX designer? And the answer to that is no. You do not need to be good at drawing at all. That's just not necessary. What you need to be good at is, or what you can train, is translating insights that you get out of research and thinking about how can I turn this insight into something that can actually solve a user challenge, or something that can actually leverage an opportunity that we see. So it evolves creativity in the sense of problem solving, of thinking about things. So in the reality, you will find that you spent a lot of time interviewing people, writing insights reports, attending meetings with developers or other stakeholders, moderating workshops, creating customer journeys. So the creativity really comes through the variety of the work and your ability to switch your focus and switch your responsibility. And this is something that I found challenging at times because it's something that needs practice. You need to learn at what level we're talking. So, for example, when you're talking with another designer, that's a good opportunity to talk about the design work in detail. But when you're talking to a stakeholder, you might want to give them completely different information that sets the context, that explains what is important for them to know. So you are switching focus, you're switching altitudes, and you're switching perspectives a lot of times. And that's where the creativity comes in. Okay, my voice is really starting to crack. So it's good. We have some time to answer questions then. Oh, I had another one. I switched the numbers I saw. But this is a really good one though. And that is that you don't have to be a designer to work in UX. And I think we see more and more of this coming up in the past years. So when I started my UX journey, the choices I had in my mind was, do I want to become a UI designer, or do I want to become a UX designer? And I actually first thought I wanted to do UI design because I really liked like designing in Photoshop. I've done that a lot, and I could imagine this more graphic part to be something I liked. While I was doing the CF course, I learned that I actually liked the UX part better, so I focused more on that. But those were really the only two roles I had in my mind. It was only UI or UX design. There are more roles, and they are getting more and more popularity now as well, which is good. we have more specialized roles now. So you have UX writers, you have UX researchers, you have UX strategists. So even when you're someone that doesn't really like the design part and really likes the research part, you can become a UX researcher. If you're someone that isn't that visual at all, you can consider becoming a UX writer. So the design part, and more specifically the visual design part, is only one part of what makes a good experience, but we have many more parts. We have content strategists or content designers, which you will see more and more of now, and I think it's actually a really exciting field to specialize in. You have UX strategists. You of course have also the technological focus. So if you're someone that is really motivated by the actual building things and the developing things, that is also something that is very vital to creating a good experience. So keep in mind that there are many different options that you have a way to leverage your strengths, but don't let it stop you. I think in the beginning of a UX journey, I get this question regularly from people that ask, should I already become a user researcher, or should I already decide to become a UX writer? And if you have previous work experience in this, or if you feel really strongly about it and you have a skill set that already matches this more specialized role, you could consider it. But it's going to be very hard to become a specialist as a beginner. That's kind of a paradox. So it's good to know that you have these specialized roles and that you can grow into something more specialized. But also know that when you're just at the beginning of your UX journey, focus on getting the essentials right first. So focus on perfecting your craft, focus on feeling comfortable with these design tools that you're going to be using. Practice your user interview skills. Go through the different parts that make up a designer and build a foundation in that first before you're going to, force yourself in a certain direction. Because, and that's also what I just said, it might also very well be that during your journey, you find out that you thought you're really going to like one part, and then it turns out you really like another part. So approach your journey with an open mind, focus on the foundations, and then see where it takes you. And realize that if you don't really like the design part, that's also okay. You can always grow into something else. Okay, so we're at the end of the presentation. To very quickly recap what I talked about, I think the most important takeaway is that UX design is, or working as a UX designer, the title might imply that you're just going to design screens, and that's not what our job is about. Our job is actually covers a lot of different roles and responsibilities. That makes it so exciting. That also gives you the opportunity to specialize in things. But it can also be challenging because you have to switch perspectives. You have to be able to talk to a lot of different people and bring a lot of different people together. So that is something that is awaiting for you when you're just starting your UX journey. And I'm really excited for you because it is something, like I said, that has so much potential to learn. There is so much out there for you to learn. And I think that is what makes our job really cool. The UX job, industry, will forever be evolving. And that makes it also so refreshing. So that was my pitch on how to become a UX designer. I'm now gonna jump into the questions. Belinda, I already saw you popping up shortly, so I think now would be
Yeah,
a time to answer some of the questions that people might have.
sure. Thank you so much for wrapping up. I was almost jumping into, to address the question, but yeah. Okay, Maureen, thank you so much for a great presentation, for sharing so many nice insights about things we need to be aware of actually before entering into a new field as is UX design. So we're gonna address all the questions from the audience. We have so many, so thank you everyone for posting them. And if you have any more, please, this is your chance to ask anything to Maureen. Um, I have actually one question from my side that I would like to
Mhm.
ask you, Maureen, and I think it's nice to open because sometimes the concept of UX design is not clear.
Mhm.
So, from your experience, from your knowledge, how would you define UX design, and why is so important for the development of a product?
I have thought about this ever since I started working in UX design, because to be really honest with you, even when I started working as a UX designer, I didn't really know what UX design was about. I was just like, okay, let's see where this road takes me. Now having worked as a designer for a couple of years, but this is just my personal view, how I would define UX design is that it is within a company the voice that represents challenges and opportunities that customers might have. And it not only is voicing these challenges and opportunities, but it is also helping to find a way to address it. And this helping to find a way to address it, that is our design practice. So what we are doing is taking stock of what a business is trying to achieve, what the users, what the customers of this business is trying to achieve. And we're bringing that together and offering solutions on how we can achieve that. So, to make that more concrete and to bring that back to Zalando, like Zalando is a fashion platform. We're selling fashion and lifestyle articles. So it is in the best interest of the business to keep on growing and to have more people buying jeans. But maybe customers might become very critical of buying more fashion items, and maybe they don't want to buy more. So, how can we combine these two? That is what we as designers are doing. We are thinking about, okay, if a company wants to sell more articles and customers are becoming critical of buying more, how could we leverage that? How could we make sure, for example, that customers are making smarter buying decisions? Or how can we help customers buy less, but keep the things that they have and really make sure that they enjoy it? So this is just like one example, but this is how you're constantly balancing different goals and trying and testing out solutions on how you can achieve these goals. So I think that is how I would, in a lot of words, describe UX design.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Maureen. So interesting, and it's nice to hear you explaining what is UX design. So thank you so much. Um, I have one question actually from my side, which I think is also super interesting for the audience, and it's about transferable skills, because we always speak that we take people from scratch, but actually you are not never from scratch. There are transferable skills that you can acquire in your previous role or even at school or in different experiences. So what do you think are the most important transferable skills, or let's say skills, soft skills of a UX designer?
I think, well, you have a lot of career switchers that switch into UX design. And I think in any previous career, you will find that there are things that are really useful in your job as a designer. But I think in general, the soft skills that are really helpful to have or to fine tune as you're going to work as a designer are communication skills, are presentation skills, facilitating workshops. That's also what I talked about in the presentation. It's about building these bridges. So if you are a good communicator, which also includes being a good listener, then I think that's a very good skill to have as a UX designer. If you are someone that has an eye for patterns, if you can quickly understand how things work and identify why they work, that is also something that is really useful to have as a designer. If you're someone that is curious and that likes to figure things out on their own and that enjoys taking initiative and taking ownership, those are also things that are really useful to have as designers. So you will find that in a lot of different careers, there are skills that are transferable into UX. For example, I studied art history, which has really nothing to do with design. And even there, I find a lot of things that I have learned in art history that are very useful in UX design. For example, I've learned thousands and thousands of artworks and I had to memorize them. And building this visual encyclopedia in my head is actually a skill that I now use to quickly understand, different user flows throughout apps, or I have a easy time understanding these patterns that I just mentioned, these interaction patterns, because I've trained this skill before. So you will find skills in the weirdest places.
Great. Thank you so much, Maureen. Okay. We are going to go and address the question from the audience. So we are going to start with the question from Claude. I'm sorry if I pronounce anyone's name wrong. It's not intentionally. So Claude is asking, you are a product designer. So how do you differentiate at your company between this role, UX designer, and the product owner or manager?
I think Claude actually says this in the right way, at your company, and that is essential because every company defines these job titles differently. So what might be a product designer in company A is a UX designer in company B, and that is kind of the annoying reality with which we have to live. But if we're talking very specifically about Zalando, then I see that product designers are really concerned, or like the responsibility of product designers is really purely the design part. So strategy, research, content for a bit, also working on the actual concepts, whereas the product owners or the project managers that we have, they're more focused on taking our work and turning that into roadmap items, into packages that they can bring forth to the engineers that can then start building that. So the product owner or the project manager in our company is more responsible for building that bridge between the designers, out of my perspective, the designers and the rest of the product team. So they don't do a lot of designing. They're more there to help us plan the work and to make sure that everyone is on the same page. They also facilitate this collaboration again. So those are two completely different roles at my company. But again, I want to stress that my title right now is product designer. My title has been service designer. My title has been UX designer. So I've had lots of different titles. And in reality, in my experience, the tasks are, for the most part, the same. So I would not put too much value on these titles because they're very different per company. And what is more important to look at is what will you be working on? What will be your tasks when you start working on a company, rather than what will be your title?
Great. I hope this answers your question, Claude. We have a few questions from Maria. So I'm going to start for the first one, and we can address the other one. She's asking which things or learnings help you to gain experience in the UX field.
The most important thing that helped me progress in the UX field and that helped me grow my career is don't wait for others to reach out a hand. Be someone that keep that curiosity. If you don't know how something works, figure it out. Try a training, read up on it, take ownership over topics, so show that you want to take initiative, that you like to lead projects. And this mindset of I'm first going to try to figure it out on my own is something that was very helpful to me. That said, I do think it's very important to ask for help. And that is something that I'm still working on, to learn how to ask for help more. But I think there is, what I'm saying is, keep that initiative and keep that curiosity to discover things. That is the one thing that helped me in my career the most.
Definitely, to keep that curiosity helps you to learn a lot and to achieve so many things. Okay, many people is asking about tools. Marie is also asking, what other design tools or skills do you think are critical to learn and develop for the industry aside the one we know as Figma and UX design tools?
So I think, yeah, apart from like all the like the Figma and other design tools, I think it's very important to focus on soft skills because, as you might have seen throughout the presentation, those are really essential to perform your job as a designer well. So if you have any chance on learning more about how to communicate effectively, how to articulate design decisions, there's literally a book that's called Articulating Design Decisions. Um, how to facilitate workshops. Those are skills that I found were really useful for my career, to learn how to bring people together in a room and arrive at actionable outcomes. So I would, if you already feel comfortable using, like the hard skills, Figma and stuff, I would focus on sharpening those soft skills.
Great. Yeah, communication is something really important. How do you see this when you are trying like to acquire this skill, communication skill? What is your advice or recommendation? Like you don't develop that skill at the first moment, like it needs time, or what do you think is about that to develop that skill?
Yeah, that's a good question because it is, I whenever people say something like you need to become a better communicator, I always had to roll my eyes because I thought, yeah, okay, but how do I become a better communicator? And I think what really helped me was to think about, if you're in a conversation with someone, what try to figure out what their needs are, what their worries are, what they are trying to achieve. So become an active listener, practice your listening skills, and that will automatically make you a better communicator because you will find out that if you have 10 different colleagues, they have 10 different goals. And how can you find a compromise in that? And how can you bring those goals together? Uh, and to make it even, oh, I see that Lucy already recommended exactly the book that I also wanted to recommend, which is Nonviolent Communication. This book helped me so much with my communication skills. So I would fully recommend you read that one. So shout
Great.
out to Lucy.
Thank you everyone for sharing so many nice resources. That's great. Thank you, Maureen. Also, Marianne is sharing that she has seen your Instagram account and she loved the content you create. And she's asking, I think this is a very cool question. How difficult or easy and demanding is having an account that is so well done? And if you have any recommendation in case someone wants to create one.
It is easy because I really enjoy doing it. So it's a hobby of mine. And instead of spending my free time on other things, like watching Netflix, I spend the hours creating content. That at the same time also makes it very difficult because if you're working as a designer and after work you're spending more time behind your computer to design again, it can be very draining. And it's not always easy to or it can be very demanding. To come back to the question, it can be very demanding because it's something that you're doing on top of your work and your life. So it's just depending on how much time, how much energy, how much motivation you have at a single point in time to do it. However, I like I said, I really enjoy doing it. I really enjoy creating this content. And so it does not feel like a chore. And I've always told myself, if it's going to start to feel like a chore, I'm doing less of it, which also means that lately, for example, I have not been as active as I was in the beginning because I just have so many other things on my plate that this has a lower priority. Do I recommend uh, you starting an Instagram page? I recommend you putting out your journey in any way that works for you. That does not have to be an Instagram page, that can also be a TikTok, a Medium blog, sharing updates on LinkedIn, joining Discord channels. What is important is that you start sharing your online journey. And the reason that is important is because people will only know that you exist when they can see it. And this is important because you want to start building a network so that when you start looking for jobs, people have already seen you, they kind of know you, they know your work, they know what you're about, they know what you find important. So I recommend you do anything that helps you to build that online presence. It does not have to be an Instagram. If I were to start today, I would probably not start an Instagram because it is so fleeting. It's a medium that moves very fast. So you just have to keep on creating content. There are other ways to create content in a bit more of a sustainable way. For example, writing blogs. But yes, I would recommend um, any of these ways that would work out for you.
Definitely. Thank you, Maureen. I hope this inspire others to create more digital content and create their presence there. It's also is really useful for others to learn and to get inspired and motivated. So thank you so much, actually, Maureen, for that. I'm mindful actually of the time, so we are going to take a couple of more questions. I think these are going to be very helpful. People is asking about job interviews and portfolio. So Susan is asking, what kind of portfolio do you need? And also, I would like to ask you, could you give a little bit of introduction about why it's important to have a portfolio for the job interview?
Mm-hmm. So the first thing that is important to realize is that a portfolio is not a goal on its own, but rather it's an outcome of all the work that you've put in before. So it's a showcase of what you can do. So the number one mistake that people tend to make is that they think I need to get this portfolio done as soon as possible. And so they skip practicing their skills, which leads to the portfolio not being as strong because you didn't really practice what you're showing here. So what makes a good portfolio? One that shows that you have deep understanding of what you're showing, of the skills that you're portraying. Then what was the other part of the question?
Yeah,
Because
Susan
two
is
parts.
asking like what kind of portfolio you need.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of portfolio? I think it's really good if you're starting to apply for jobs and you already kind of know which industry or ideally which company you would like to work at, because this will help you to structure your portfolio. And that is, what kind of portfolio do you need? You need one that is focused, that is convincing to the job you're applying to. So when you know that you want to work in healthcare, it is already a good idea to start focusing your case studies on healthcare, so that when you start to apply for jobs, you have a focused interview, you have a focused portfolio, you can really explain to the people that would invite you to an interview, why you are a strong candidate. So what kind of portfolio? One that is very focused, that shows what you can do, that shows that you've practiced your skills, and that shows how you can be the best candidate for a particular job role.
Yeah, this is a great advice. Actually, related to this answer, and there is a question from Hashtip, and I think it could like make wider the answer, the explanation. Sorry. What we should add in our portfolio in the beginning to get job interviews?
So, following again this idea that your portfolio showcases your understanding of skills, what you want to add to your portfolio is not just the flashy final design screens. In fact, those are the least exciting things. What you want to add in your portfolio is how did you get to the flashy final design screens? Show sketches, show post-its, show insights from your user interviews, any kind of artifact that you've created along the way and that explains your thought process is something that is gold for your portfolio. And a lot of people think that you can only show the perfect things in a portfolio. Those are the boring things. Show the ugly sketches, show the questions you've had, show the things that you found really difficult, the challenges you had, because these are the things that show the critical moments in your design process. These show the moments where you have to step back and think, what am I trying to solve here? How am I going to solve it? And that is what what a team wants to know when someone new joins them. The final designs are a good way to, you know, get you excited to click on a case study. But if the case study only has the final designs and does not show the way to these designs, then it's not a very convincing portfolio because you cannot estimate how good someone is in their work.
Awesome. Thank you, Maureen. Following this again, there is a question from Jashvant.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking, apart from a good portfolio, what else would you consider necessary to be able to crack a job interview?
Know the company. So before you apply to a role, really take your time to understand what you're applying for. So understand the company, understand the products that they're building or the services that they have, understand their work culture. Every company has like an about page. Read through that. Do some Google research on the company. If it's a publicly listed company, check out how how their stocks are doing, how they're doing financially. That also gives you insights in what kind of company it is. And I think, look at a job interview as a date. Would you want to date someone that is absolutely not interested in you and very clearly does not know who you are and doesn't really care who you are? That's not the kind of person that you want to go on a date with. So consider your job interview as going on a date with someone. Get interested in this person, like understand what this person is trying to achieve. So if you have a good portfolio and you know the company, then there is actually then you have a very strong foundation. And you will find in job interviews that a lot of questions are also about just understanding what kind of person you are, what you're excited about, how you work, what you find important. So these job interviews, they're not gonna, it's not gonna be an exam of create a persona for us. It's more about who you are as a person. And that is something that the best advice I can give is just be yourself, because if that does not work out, then it's just not a good fit or for the team. And that is also okay, even though that can feel very hurtful, this rejection. I've been through it also. But it's better to find that out early, because it's all about understanding, do we want to work together with each other? And therefore you need that kind of interest.
Amazing. Great insight, Maureen. Thank you so much. I have one last question. I know we have so many questions we didn't address. I'm sorry about it, but we have to be mindful of the time. I have one question, like to close the Q&A session and the webinar itself. What advice would you give to someone who want to enter into the field of UX design?
The advice I would give is think about your motivations to start in the field. Find a support system around you that is going to be there for you while you are trying to break into an industry, because it is demanding, it is challenging, but it is also very rewarding. So you need to know in the beginning that this is not going to be a walk in the park. You need to do work for this. This is not going to be easy. And that is not to say, that's not to scare you off, but I think that there is a lot of there is this idea that all of this is just, it's going to happen like that. And to bring a bit more realism in it, I'm telling you, it will take more time. So also be gentle on yourself, don't force things, don't rush things. Take the time you need to learn about different methods and tools, to practice, to build a case study. Because, UX design is not going anywhere in the next few years, also not with AI. So take your time to really build the skills.
Great. Thank you so much, Maureen. We're gonna close the Q&A. I'm really sorry. Maureen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to share this webinar with you this evening. And thank you for the presentation, for answering all of the questions, and for being with us today. Also, thank you everyone for posting the question, for being engaged in the chat, and for being here today. Before we close, let me remind you that we have, I'm pleased to tell you about a special discount that we are offering just this month, a career change scholarship worth up to 1,285 euros and 1,125 euros of the full price of our UX and UI design programs for the 100 first career changers who apply. If you would like to receive more information about, I recommend booking a call with a program advisors, and you can do that by clicking on the sticky note at the top of the chat. Please let me also tell you that we have a fantastic blog at CareerFoundry run by our team of editors with plenty of great articles about UX design and more topics. Please also check out the CareerFoundry YouTube channel, which has a lot of great video content. And finally, please visit our events page because we have more upcoming events just like this one. Before I close, I would like to give you some time to say any final words, Maureen.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everyone that wrote in questions. I always like the audience at CF because they have so many questions. So if you had a question and I didn't answer it, write me a DM on Instagram. You can find me at ux.collection, and then you can write me a DM there. It sometimes takes a bit of time for me to get back to you, but I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. And yeah, thanks again. Looking forward to the design thinking event that we're going to do next month.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, it's already available on our events page to register. So please, maybe my colleague has posted the link to register there. Once again, thank you, Maureen, for being with us today and sharing so many nice insights about UX design. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great day, and we see us in the next one. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.